So here we go. You know what's coming. It's almost that time again. Let's have a little discussion about it. You know what it is. It's the one argument that the Republicans cannot articulate and can never win. Hey, everybody. Damon Roberts here. Glad you're in for another video. I want to remind you this video is brought to you by our sponsor, Mike Lindell and MyPillow, mypillow.com/LFS6B. For all the best deals for the LFS6B audience, use our code LFS6B at checkout for 10 to 60% off. That's right. It's the one argument that the Republicans never seem to be able to get out ahead of. And you can get ready right now to keep hearing people like Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, Democrat leadership, every talking head on Democrat operative TV, the Sunday shows, and dare I even say the worst of them all, of course, that would be Mitch McConnell. They'll start the unison in chant here coming up, and it goes a little something like this. If we do not vote to raise the debt ceiling, then what will happen is the full faith and credit of the United States will be destroyed because we will default on our debt. Ah, yes. The circus surrounding the debt ceiling, that's what's coming, folks. Some say how the debt ceiling is eventually resolved only changes the timing and the extent of the economic collapse that this country faces. $31 trillion in fiscal operating debt, upwards of $250 trillion in unfunded liabilities associated with Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Now, if you've watched me in any capacity since 2015, since I started doing live from Studio 6B, you know that this is one of the topics, maybe the one topic I have been most frustrated with when it comes to Republicans, because we do not have anyone on our side that ever wants to articulate the real situation here. And this is extremely important because this is your country. And more importantly, this is your taxes and your money. Now let's go back in history. The high water mark for fiscal conservatism over the last couple of generations was Newt Gingrich's House, forcing President Bill Clinton to enact balanced budgets. The Tea Party movement was spawned to re-emphasize fiscal conservatism. This movement, which had strong influence for some time, has waned, not because of the people involved with the Tea Party, but because of Republican leadership. As a result, for more than a dozen years now, elected Republican leaders have authored record deficit spending bills. Of course, none worse than Mitch McConnell, the greatest debt creator the Republican Party has ever seen, bar none. So let's get to the crux of the argument. The claim that we will default on debt payments, folks, it's a political red herring. The federal government is always receiving all forms of income taxes and other fees to the tune of about $350 billion a month. Now, servicing the debt is about $45 billion a month. That's what the debt service costs. You pay existing interest, principal, and pensions. Existing, not prospective, existing. So how will we default if we're bringing in $350 billion and the debt service is around $45 billion? Well, we won't default, and that's the point.
And I think the idea of default, literally, like you don't make the bond payment, is a red herring. It will never happen. And the reason for it is even if we get past October 16, there is $250 billion of revenue coming in every month. Yes. The checks. That money can be prioritized. There is nothing that will stop the Treasury Secretary in an urgent situation to say, I'm paying $30 billion a month out of the $250 for interest. Easily cover the interest. He will cover the interest. That I'm paying $70 billion out of the inflow for Social Security. Easy. That I'm paying some or all.
So what's with all the alarm bells? Why is Treasury Secretary Jack Lew and others warning?
Because it's a lot of political maneuvering to try to blame the other side for the fact that we don't have a budget, we don't have a fiscal process, and our Washington is being run by irresponsible people. You you could easily make interest payments. It's a few transactions. You easily could make the Social Security payments. They're already programmed. This is pure propaganda coming from the Treasury, trying to leverage the Congress to do the bidding of the sanctimonious man in the White House. This is just not true, and we will find out when the debt ceiling expires that they do have the authority to allocate and prioritize.
Did you know we've shut down the government 17 times between 1976 and 1995? Oh, yes, we did. And we're still here. The country survived. The government is still, unfortunately, operating, some would say. The military didn't disband. They didn't go home. None of it. It all survived. Then they say, well, if we don't raise the debt ceiling, then we're not paying for all the expenses that took place in the prior administration. Well, that's a bold-faced lie. That money is already gone. In order to raise the debt ceiling, we're talking about forward spending on additional programs. That's what we're talking about. Folks, they want to raise the debt ceiling so they can continue implementing utopia. You know what we're talking about here. That's what they're talking about. They want to continue to expand this ever-bloated federal government. It's not about past, it's about future. Now, there's also a requirement that after that debt service of around $45 billion, there's actually a priority in which that money that comes into the federal coffers has to be spent. That includes Social Security, Medicare, Veterans Affairs, federal pensions, among other things. So those get paid in a government shutdown no matter what. They're the first in line after the debt service. And the reason you have to pay the debt service, of course, is because the 14th Amendment compels it, which we'll get to here in a little bit. Because the Democrats will try to use the 14th Amendment to their advantage in this discussion. And the Republicans need to be unified and ready for a response. So those come first, the debt service, then you have these entitlement programs. And then the rest, if there's something left over, is for Congress and the president to actually have to work out what their priorities are on spending. Maybe try to live, I don't know, within the budget. You can't borrow any more money to pay for your previous borrowing. So when you hear in the next coming months from all these people telling you that the economy is going to collapse, we're going to default on our debt, we will certainly not. People won't get paid Social Security. They certainly will. They're trying to scare you, folks. That's what they do. The Democrats, the media will help them because this is what they do. And look how successful they've been. Massively expanding expenditures, massively expanding the budget. Now, the other thing that will most certainly happen with this administration, of course, and the radical Democrat leadership of today, and we've already seen this with the attempt at the student debt loan forgiveness power that the president absolutely doesn't have. The Democrats will argue that if Republicans won't raise the debt ceiling, then Joe Biden might as well just do it himself. Section 4 of the 14th Amendment requires, quote, the validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law shall not be questioned, unquote. Now, the left and liberals will argue that if Congress has authorized spending, this automatically gives the president the power and even the obligation to borrow whatever it takes to spend all the money for which Congress voted for. When Congress votes to spend money, this includes the obligation of the chief executive to take whatever actions are necessary to pay the debts of the U.S. government. That is because, and they'll say, quote, the validity of the public debt shall not be questioned. Thus, any debt ceiling violates Section 4. That's what the left will argue. See, folks, liberals see the Constitution as something that stands in their way. That's why they argue that it's obsolete, it must be ignored, it was written at a different time, it's evolving, it's a living thing. You've heard all the arguments. It was written for a different society, it must be ignored to get things done. A better tomorrow, you know. That's why we need to get things done. Now, a couple things about this. Section 4 refers to public debt authorized by law. Debts that exceed the debt ceiling are not authorized by law. Secondly, the debt ceiling enacted by congressional power under Section 5 actually modifies Section 4. Section 5 of the 14th Amendment provides, quote, the Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. So when Congress enacted the debt ceiling, it changed whatever effect Section 4 might have had. Section 4 also does not empower the executive branch to borrow any more money or incur any new debt. It refers to the validity of already existing debt. But folks, you can expect the left, and of course this president and this Democratic leadership, to absolutely make the argument that the president can do this on his own. Just like he tried to take the power of the purse away from Congress when it came to this federal debt loan forgiveness for students, they will absolutely try to do it here. Republicans need to be unified and need to have a winning message to go against this when they play this card, because they absolutely will play this card. Solving the debt ceiling problem in ways that politicians keep talking about for the last decade, 12, 10, 15 years, is nothing but a political fix. It's not a solution to the underlying insolvency bankruptcy problem facing the U.S. government. As a matter of fact, these kind of talking points, political fixes, is why we're in this position. Government has no one to blame but itself for this problem. No one but government is capable of solving it. Unfortunately, government knows how to create problems, but of course not how to solve them. Folks, we do not have an income problem in this country. The government takes in plenty of money. What we have is a spending problem, and it's a spending problem that neither party wants to address. So the debt ceiling argument is obviously going to come up. You're going to hear the continued arguments that we've always heard, hopefully with a new House, new leadership, and a new focus on the debt and spending. Republicans can actually try to win this argument and make sure the public at least understands what a government shutdown actually entails, which is about 16% of the federal government actually shuts down. People get their Medicaid, they get their Medicare, the military doesn't go away. Everything continues on. The debt gets serviced. There's plenty of money continuing to come in. So these arguments are a red herring, as I said, and the Republicans need to be positioned to finally try to win this argument despite their leadership in the Senate. All right, that's going to do it for this one, everybody. Have a great day. Remember to visit our sponsor, Mike Lindell, mypillow.com/LFS6B for all the best deals. And make sure you visit our store, 6bshirts.com, for some great merchandise for the 6B audience. And I'll see you in the next one.